Welcome back, and we're joined in the studio by Trevor Ndjadila. He's the Business Development Manager at Alexander Forbes Investments Namibia. Hello, Trevor, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Trevor, in a nutshell, give us an idea of what happened to the markets last year and why did it happen?
Okay, last year brought a close to a year where a global pandemic affected all our lives, and one we are still trying to navigate into 2021. The rollout of vaccines globally has given some light at the end of a very difficult time, but the reality is that we are still not at the end of the crisis, and we continue to feel its ongoing impact. The fourth quarter of last year saw a continuation of the strong rebound that we experienced for most of the year, following the sharp sell-off we saw in the first quarter. The strong performance of asset classes in 2020 does not reflect the uncertainty and weakness of the macroeconomic environment, and is something that we are very focused on. The reality is the major driver behind the strong performance has been the unprecedented global stimulus to support economies in a time of crisis rather than a return of normal growth.
As is very often said, if the rest of the world sneezes, then Namibia gets a cold. So obviously, we were also impacted by the market volatility last year. To which extent was Namibia impacted?
In terms of Namibia, if we first look at just the equity market or asset classes, Namibian equity struggled with a negative 1.8%. However, Namibian cash performed close to 6%, provided positive real return in a subdued inflation environment where Namibia inflation came in at 2.2% for the year. And lastly, but not least, Namibian bond returns were also quite very well or performed excellent, shrugging off sovereign ratings, stretched liquidity concern, and a precarious fiscal situation to finish the year with a return of 4.4%. While returns were positive for the year, this came with a large degree of volatility. The purposeful diversification, this is now looking at our portfolios, ensured risk was controlled despite the uncertainty, reducing the volatility of portfolio returns when compared to the overall market volatility. In addition to reducing risk, the diversification also ensured exposure to a wide different class of investments, allowing for a diverse set of return opportunities for the portfolios to capture in the year. From a performance perspective, most of our portfolios have navigated the environment well and have outperformed their respective benchmarks.
Trevor, looking at 2021 and going forward, what can we expect from the markets, and what is your advice to people investing and getting scared when all this volatility is ongoing?
Okay, your first part, I would basically say the recovery is dependent on a widespread of effective vaccine rollout. I think that's number one for the country or the world as a whole. Notably, the last quarter data releases were by and large encouraging, with a significant rebound in real GDP as lockdown restrictions were lifted to allow for increased economic activity. Going forward, we expect the economy to return to a moderate recovery of 2.6% in 2021 before increasing at about 3% in 2022. The recovery is likely to be supported by the traction gained in some of our productive SOEs, especially NamPower and NamWater, with investment projects already in the pipeline, which aim to ensure efficient provision of energy and water across the country. However, the wholesale and retail trade sectors, which contribute to about 10% of total GDP, are likely to remain subdued given the high unemployment rate and cautious consumer spending. In terms of just looking at the message to people who are worried about the knockoff effect they've suffered in 2020. As with any typical journey, where we may experience both smooth and bumpy periods, the investment journey is no different. Clients are reminded of the importance of remaining invested through the short-term noise and volatility. Staying committed to your long-term goals is critical. The market is a scary place, but long-term investors shouldn't panic.
That's very sound advice. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. That is Trevor Ndjadila. He is the Business Development Manager at Alexander Forbes Investment Namibia. Thank you and goodbye.